Hello guys, I'm Ike Chambers and welcome back to VuDivulged.
I'm Anthony Plakowski, and today we're going to be following up on the situation that is currently taking place in Israel.
Now, there has not been too many new developments. I mean, the bombing still going on. There has been some more evidence actually showing that Hamas, like one of their rockets, was the one that caused the hospital to catch on fire and all that from all different sources throughout the world. But we'll see. When more detail come out, we will tell you. But as of now, it is pointing towards like Hamas that they did it. Now, was it on purpose? Most likely not. Most likely, I mean, those. You've seen the rocket. The rockets are not.
They're made out of water pipes, right?
Yeah,
They're not state of the art. They're kind of like the Revolutionary War era kind of rockets.
So they're
where you just fire it and you hope for the best.
Yeah, they're not the greatest. So
yeah, that hospital has really been surrounded in mystery for like the last week. People, more evidence now is pointing towards Hamas, but it was for they try to blame it on Israel for a bit, and they also try to say that it wasn't actually like the hospital building itself that they hit. It was actually the big parking lot next to the hospital. So while yes, technically did they hit the hospital? Yes, but some reports are saying that, or did say that, it was actually the parking lot and not 500. But that is...
I mean, it's warfare. I mean, any information coming out of those two countries is always going to be skewed towards one side, even if it is true. But you can never fully accept it with a grain of salt.
Because they're both going to want the story that fits them the most.
Like I said, one side might be telling the truth, but at the same time, it's like, of course they would. It's the whole thing.
I remember watching a video. I think it was like a civilian in a skyscraper, or like probably like a weather camera. I don't know for sure what kind of camera it was, but it said that it was believed it was looking at the hospital. It's kind of hard to tell because it's night, but you see Hamas firing rockets into Israel, and if you look real closely, you can actually see one come up and then kind of fail and go right back down.
So are you saying that was the rocket somewhere thing, or you're saying that's just like an example of like...
That was a video. I don't know if that is a true video. It is. There is a video of Hamas firing several rockets over to Israel, and then one actually goes up and then comes down right away. Because once again, they're made out of water piping. They're not really.
Yeah.
They're more of a fire and hope we hit something, not a modern radar, laser guided missile. So. They do have there has been proof at this point now that some of their rockets are falling short and they are bombing themselves on accident. But then, of course, they try to blame it on Israel.
I mean, it's warfare. I mean, either side wants basically the world on their... I mean, no one's on Hamas side. No one, I mean...
Well, there's actually some people... I think one of the biggest challenges is, some people are siding with the Palestinians, but they're not realizing that not all Palestinians are part of Hamas. Yeah. There are actually a lot of Palestinians that don't agree with Hamas. Hamas ruled the Gaza Strip, and some Palestinians even say that they don't like that Hamas is running the Gaza Strip.
I mean, it's a bad situation no matter how you look.
How do you, there are, like I said last week, there are prayer circles that Jews, Palestinians, and everybody of all religions are, praying for the violence to stop. So, has Israel wronged Palestinians in the past? Yeah, it's true. And Palestinians have wronged Israel, right? But what Hamas is doing, they're targeting civilians. That's their initial attack. and they're hostages, right? And I think they've taken several hostages, and you have to call them hostages because they're not prisoners of war. Because I'm pretty sure for you to count as a prisoner of war, like prisoner of war and civilians fall under two categories under the Geneva Convention. So you cannot, purposely target a music festival, for example, full of civilians, right? Capture them, detain them, and then call them prisoners of war, because they're not military combatants. You weren't attacking military combatants, therefore, it's not an act of war; it's an act of terrorism.
I mean, on that hostage thing. I mean, you saw that it was a hostage released. Some of them are being released, but what really got the media and all the news outlets and stuff like that really stirring is there was an older lady that thanked one of the members of Hamas. Yeah, when she was being released, and that whole basically, they did some interviews with her, asking why'd she do that and all that. Well, apparently she said that soldier they've been treating her well. Like she said when she was first captured, I mean, she was being dragged through the tunnel, she was being flogged with a stick, but when she was there, the soldiers were treating her nicely, made sure she had food, water, things of that nature. And of course, it's kind of a PR problem for both Israel and the U.S. Of course, not every single thing. Well, and if you think about it,
it also is for, not only Israel and the U.S., but Hamas too, because, you get stories like that where they release people. Because now my first thought is, are they releasing the people that they got that were treated well, or that they wanted to be released? There are other reports of women being released, but the men are still held hostage. So it's like you said, it's another PR battle, because you want each side is trying to show that they were the one that was wronged, right, and what they're doing is necessary. But Hamas, the group, they're targeting civilians.
Yeah.
And there really isn't I can't think of. It's kind of hard to call it an act of war, right? When you were targeting civilians. At that point, it's an act of terrorism.
Yeah. But like I said, no matter you look, there's going to be people on either side. For Israel, for Hamas, or the Palestinians, but they kind of rope in Hamas into one group, even though they're both pretty much different, even though they're both Palestinians. The senior spokesperson for Hamas, apparently they told Israel that if they stop bombing, they will release all the hostages, which is I think the count got up to 200 plus hostages, also including many Americans. They said that if they stop bombing, they will release the hostages. Now, there's been no real word on what else was told, if they stop bombing, will be the time frame for them to be released, and just don't know yet.
And the Israeli Prime Minister has said they will bring hellfire on Hamas. We've eliminated thousands of terrorists. So I think at this point both sides really aren't willing to talk. Because Hamas wants them to stop bombing, because Israel has, backed by the USA, a much better air force, right?
Yeah,
So I think they're trying to eliminate air superiority in the region, right? They know that they cannot handle Israel alone.
But like I said, we don't know what more was said in the deal, the time frame. All right, we stopped bombing for this long, because negotiations are always compromises got to be made on both sides for anything to really happen. But would it be a set time frame of them not allowing to be bombing? What's really stopping them once all the hostages are gone? All right, back to it.
There was an instant like that in World War II during Operation Market Garden, where Germany agreed, because the British were. Long story short, Operation Market Garden is still widely debated on whether it was actually successful or not, or did anything of any significance. But at one point, the British were getting their butts kicked, and Americans. And Germany agreed for a 3-hour ceasefire for everybody to withdraw their troops. But the moment that 3 hours was up, it was game on again. And I think that's might be what could happen here in Israel. Is we say ceasefire and everyone's like, hey, a ceasefire, and I'm like, yeah, but it only lasts 3 hours. So we need to get whatever in our country. We need to get the injured people out of here and get ready, right? Regroup, because they always say peacetime is just time to prepare for the next war. So if your enemy's not shooting at you, you're also preparing for him to come back.
I mean, this whole situation. It's getting worse and worse. Like, I think the count they got from like Gaza from like the 2-week bombings, like 5,000 something people have been like killed at this point. That's only 2 weeks, and like I said, who knows how much longer it's going to keep going. So that number's just going to keep racking up.
And purposely targeting civilians is a war crime, but the problem is, for both sides, they're fighting in the middle of a city. Densely packed cities. How do you you can do your best to avoid hitting civilians, and I'm not saying it is ever right to bomb civilians, but when they're so densely packed in a city, you can't control. Once you detonate a bomb, it's not like you control what the shockwave does to the building, right? It's not like you can control where all that shrapnel goes. So, and the civilians are obviously going to hide in the buildings, because yes, the buildings are what's technically getting bombed, but you don't want to be in the middle of the street with all that shrapnel flying around.
I think, just to go off that, there was a Hamas leader, they traced him. I forgot how they traced him, but they launched a missile right on his building, killed him. But like I said, it's in the middle of the city, so buildings around it got damaged, and who knows how many people got hurt from that. But that's what comes with the problem. How do you go about this? I'll be honest, I don't know. I really don't know how you go about taking out key military targets in such a densely populated area and city. You really just can't.
Yeah, because you gotta think about this in the military's terms with that, and it's let's say there's a base the enemy's using as a weapons depot, right? But it's in the middle of Hamas has been known to keep their stockpiles in schools. So let's say this building is right next to a school, right? How do you go, okay, I need to drop a bomb on the weapons depot, right? I need to destroy the weapons depot. So my bomb needs to be powerful enough to destroy the building and what's in there. But there's a school right next to it. So I need a bomb that's going to be strong enough to destroy the weapons depot, but weak enough to where it's going to preferably not hit the school but cause a little damage. And if you think about it, it's a weapons depot. There's explosives in the depot.
Like I said, dude, I'll be honest, I don't know. I don't know how you go about this.
It is, and this is, once again, it's the propaganda war, because every civilian either side killed is just going to be used as a political tool for the other side. And apparently in a 2-week bombing campaign of the Gaza Strip, 5,087 people were killed.
So that's how many people have been killed so far? Okay.
Around 40% of them have been children. And part of that is, well, one, children, their bodies are weaker, so they can't handle it. Two, they fit in areas that, like, the smaller areas, which unfortunately, if a building is destroyed, that little corner you hid in is now where all the rubble's sitting on top of. And of course, once again, that's a huge PR thing with the children. Well, it's also a tragedy. I don't want to say that bombing civilians is only PR. They are tragedies each in their own right. And clearly, this is I don't really know how to explain it. Also kind of like a propaganda war we've never seen before, right? Because
I wouldn't say we've never seen before. Going off topic a little bit, you got the war in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Both of them doing war crimes, but they try to say, "Oh no, we're not doing it. They're doing it."
Mm-hmm.
Basically, get the rest of the world a little more on their side. Like obviously, if you saw, obviously Russia invaded Ukraine, that happened, all that. But you saw Ukraine committing a bunch of war crimes, like mass executing prisoners of war, stuff like that. That's going to turn some of the world, I want kind of favor towards Russia, because all this is stated through the Geneva Conventions, and the Geneva Conventions are basically, they are rules to war to stop unnecessary suffering. Mm-hmm. They are rules of war that you are supposed to follow.
I think they had a few main goals, which were minimize human suffering, minimize collateral damage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to minimize the overall length of a war. That's the main three goals of the Geneva Convention. And, they purposely say things like, you're not allowed to knowingly fire on a hospital, right? You are no longer allowed to purposely target and fire on a religious building, like a mosque, for example, right? But one thing I would like just to bring up is you have to look more into what I'm pretty sure we touched upon this last week. You have to look into what also the enemy is using the building for too. Mm-hmm. So, for example, let's say Israel bombs a mosque in the Gaza Strip. Well, the media would say that that's a war crime and against the Geneva Convention, right? You are not allowed to purposely target and fire upon a religious building. That is true, yes. However, what people tend to forget is that the rules of the Geneva Convention, a lot of them are written in such a way to where they can be, quote unquote, broken if necessary. So if you're using a religious building as a command, like an HQ for your forces, or as a weapons depot, well, the Geneva Convention basically states, well, if they're using it for military purposes, they reject its...
So now it's a military...
They reject its religious protection through the Geneva Convention, because in order for the Geneva Convention rule of you cannot target religious buildings, it has to only be used for religious purposes. Same thing with a hospital. You can only use it to treat the wounded, which is also why you see, people form like makeshift hospitals in a lot of religious buildings, is because both buildings are protected, because the wounded can't fight back. That's why they're in the hospital. But if you engage your enemy from a religious building, you no longer have protection against it. Now, if they fire on you, right, and you defend the wounded, that's one thing. But if you're, I don't know, let's say there's a bell tower and you have a sniper in there who is not on patrol but actively who's not like looking out, but is shooting at your soldiers. Well, they are now using that building as for military purposes and no longer have the protection.
I mean, all this culminates to like every war is a PR campaign to get the rest of the world on their side. Like this whole, like I said, this whole thing's starting to really spiral out. Like even like the, I believe it was the Turkish president of Turkey. Like he even said that Hamas wasn't a terrorist organization, and obviously that caused many others like how can you say it? Especially Israel did not like that. But like I said, it's stuff like this. It's getting, the more the line blurs, the more, I'm not gonna say like switch, but you're getting like, like is that reasonable? Should you really be doing that? You're not helping the situation, which that's what many are saying. Israel,
because sometimes
it's not helping the situation.
Because sometimes it's not about winning or losing. It's kind of like with propaganda. It's to put doubt, right? To put doubt that, well, maybe, right? Because that's what they're trying to do. And you with the Turkish president, that reminded me, the Secretary General of the United Nations made a comment that Hamas was misconstructed as a support for terror. And that caused Israel's representative in the UN to call for his resignation.
Did he mean that, or like it was like kind of misconstrued?
Well, it said
or
he said he later clarified his statement, and he said in a more clear phrase that he did not support Hamas. But
I definitely got to check out that clip. I didn't know that.
It's
I mean, that's something. I mean,
because I would think the United Nations would just call for a ceasefire, like stop it.
Well,
but then to go
ahead.
Just to then go ahead and say that they were misconstructed as support for terror. But when you're targeting civilians, right? That's another thing people tend to forget is pretty much on the very first day, Hamas was targeting civilians.
No doubt, yeah.
A vast majority of their targets were civilian targets, and they captured like police officers and executed them. So it's hard to say that it, like I said earlier, it's when it's a war, you're targeting civilians. This is a terrorist attack if you're targeting civilians.
I think actually this has happened recently, but like civilians, obviously this bombing campaign, I mean, it is destroying their lives, and like I said, food, water is low in there. But Israel has agreed to open up a corridor to allow humanitarian aid from other countries to go into Gaza. So I mean,
that's good. I mean, I was concerned about it last week because like I brought up, Hamas had been using water pipes to fire, to make rockets to fire out Israel, and even in humanitarian aid packages. Like before the pipes are even in the ground, they take them and make rockets out of them. So I was really skeptical if Israel would agree to a humanitarian aid corridor, because if you're just using the humanitarian aid corridor to then turn that stuff into rockets, we're not gonna open it because you're not using it for humanitarian aid. So I wonder if it's possible Israel might be screening what's coming through. Like if they open it up and see pipes, wires, and all this stuff, they're gonna go, no. Yeah. But if you open it up and it's just bottles of water, they'll be like, okay, go.
The European Union trying to send stuff. The United States is sending stuff. Like the other Middle Eastern countries around Israel is sending stuff, like, which is good, but I mean, the reason they didn't allow that at first was because, like, what's really stopping Hamas from just taking these?
And another thing you have to think is, humanitarian aid is, good because the countries who send it, well, a lot of people who send it, they're sending it there to help the civilians. That's really what they're sending the aid for. That way you can use your country's resources to fight the enemy, whether you're Palestinian or Israel, right? You can use your team's resources to fight each other, but let us handle the civilians who aren't involved, right? But, some countries, they're probably going to want to take a side for political talks later down the line. So some of their aid is probably military aid. And that, is obviously only going to escalate and prolong conflict, right? Because it is, a lot of wars end when one side or both sides just run out of resources. And they go, we can't continue the fighting anymore. I did hear that the U.S. has moved a carrier, some destroyers, and a unit of Marines.
I think it was like 2,000 Marines.
Yeah,
in the area.
And they were retracted from a military exercise, and I don't remember the word they used. Were sent to patrol the Eastern Mediterranean, which that's where Israel is. So, and I'm pretty sure America has even helped shoot down rockets coming into Israel. Well, I mean, granted, I'm pretty sure a lot of their technology that makes up their Iron Dome came from the U.S.
I mean, Israel and the U.S. are basically hand in hand, really. Like, I mean, there's U.S. is backing Israel, no doubt about it. Now, how much they will be backing, like, that is to be seen.
Are we providing just humanitarian aid? Are we providing food? Are we handing them water? Or are we handing them rockets?
I'll be honest, we're probably doing that too.
Well, probably.
But my thing
well,
is
because if you think about it, the Department of State labeled Hamas as a terrorist group, as a foreign terrorist organization. So it is possible we're sending them weapons, and I have no doubt that we probably are, because to us, they're a terrorist group.
Like I said, I don't know how far this will go. Like, we'll get to the point where we'll be taking, like, boots on the ground. Like I said, that is to be seen.
I did hear a few days ago that Biden did say a statement saying we will not put troops on the ground. Though I don't know, with how everything's playing out, I don't know how true that is, and I'm pretty sure there's...
Things change on a dime.
Yeah, they change on a dime, and there probably is a plan to, though I don't know if, because during war you plan for everything, right? So there probably is a plan to put troops on the ground. It doesn't mean we're going to execute the plan, but we have a plan, just in case.
I'll be honest, I'm not trying to personally, like, this is all my personal opinion, I don't think the U.S. should send, like, boots on the ground. And it's for a number of reasons, and the main reason, I believe, like, you can disagree. You want to, like, conversation between two of us, you can disagree, no problem. But I believe we shouldn't get involved because it is such a nasty situation. Because, I mean, you already see Israel's on a lot of shit's being thrown at Israel now, like, they've been bombing civilian, or bombs and copping, civilian structures, killing civilians. That dirt is starting to get on their hands. And I don't think the U.S. getting that dirt on their hands will make it any better.
Yeah, so you're taking the stand of, like, if Israel fires a rock, let's say they were the one that hits, they were the one that hit the hospital, let's say that. Well, then, the media and Hamas is going to go, look, Israel targeted a hospital with a U.S. missile.
If they do something bad, that's going to come back onto us.
Because we provided them with the...
Or if we start, like, bombing, it's like, You know what I mean? It's just
it's not a.
I don't know. Like I said, I don't really know. I mean, maybe there's probably more information that the public doesn't know what's fully going on there because it's military operations and stuff there. But it's like us going there and getting
when other
involved.
countries get involved in a conflict, it does tend to escalate because now both sides, the United States is doing it for their partner with Israel, and other countries are helping Hamas because either their beliefs or they want a political bargaining chip essentially later. When other countries get involved, they might not be losing troops, but in the political atmosphere, they have stuff to lose and gain. So they want to win the conflict as well. They want their side to win, and I personally hate that. Not only with Israel but Ukraine. A lot of people they always bring the question like, who do you want to win? And I'm like, well, but it's not a sports team. This ain't your. I want them to win because go them. It's like I just want people to stop dying. I don't want there to be war. Period. But when countries get involved, it
escalates.
It escalates because then they help them. They provide food and arms, and then other countries get mad at the other countries supporting them. So then they start supporting, and now they're fighting as well. And
then who knows?
It just snowballs down from there.
Turns into like World War III. I mean, World War I, World War II, same thing.
Yep,
Small conflicts draws in more people. Global conflict.
They say for World War II, it started with. There's a lot of debate of when World War II truly started. Some people say it started in 1941 when America got involved. Some people say it started in 1939 when Britain and France finally declared war on Germany. And some say that it started, like coming into effect, in 1973 when Japan invaded China. That's when, it. It snowballs, and it's debated on what truly started World War III. Because let's say things escalate. Let's say Ukraine and Russia are at war, right? And now Israel and Hamas are now at war. If other countries go at war and it starts building up, and now we're in World War III, are we going to label as Russia and Ukraine as the start? But since those two. Most countries seem to be back in Ukraine and, a few Russia. But with Israel, it's really kind of half and half. Even in the United States, there's a good chunk of the population here in the United States that agrees with it, the Palestinians. So are we going to label that as potentially a... That's personally why I don't like it when other countries get involved. Like, if you're right next door, right, like you share a border, to some extent I can understand. But if we're on the other side of the world, I'm not saying it doesn't affect us. It does, right? And I could understand supplying aid, but I personally don't think we should be escalating a conflict by, providing weaponry. That and I get it. We have allies, and that's the, like NATO, that is the purpose of having allies. You fight one of us, we all fight you. And that's to deter people from invading.
I mean, it's meant to deter, I'll be honest.
That really is what it is, because if you go, let's take the USA. If one country invaded the USA, well, how many countries make up NATO again?
I think it's like 100 and something countries.
No, I think that's the UN.
The UN?
Because NATO... Let me Google that real quick.
No, yeah, you're right. That's the UN.
There are 31 member states.
31.
You were a little off there.
just by a minor bit,
Yeah, so if you invade America, For example, you're going to have 30 other countries go. And the thing, what a lot of people don't realize is NATO, the sole purpose was to combine several armies into one big army. There is actually a standardization of everything, from trucks to even bolts used for those trucks. There is a standard on everything, because that way the logistics is easier. Just to make it simple, that's why a lot of weapons in the United States military shoot the same ammunition. It's not because this ammunition's cheaper or it's more powerful or whatever. The main reason you have everybody share the same ammunition is because that way, during conflict, you don't have to go, okay, this group has this group has this type of ammunition, this group has this type of ammunition. It's everybody gets this type of ammunition. So, and that's what NATO is kind of for. It is kind of to make sure that everything is standardized and everything is that at the moment it's known as we can turn 31 armies into one big army. But we're getting off topic, and that's a conversation for another day. But
I mean, I'll be honest. I think that's kind of about it for like current events that's going on in like Israel and stuff. No real other.
At this point, it's tragic. And it is. And at right now, I think it's at the point where everybody has taken their side. We are now in full swing of the conflict. Right? It is. It's gotten to where it's probably going to be until the end of conflict, until talks bring it down, if we even have talks, because wars have sometimes lasted 100 hours. Wars have sometimes lasted 100 years.
Yeah.
So we will definitely keep the viewers notified should any significant events take place, and we will definitely be monitoring the situation.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we'll update you guys on anything new that comes up or any major events that occur in the conflict in the Middle East. So do tune in next time. Are we doing a cold case next time as well? Included?
I believe one of our members is wanting to do a cold case. We're still looking into it, getting the exact details, but we think we have a good one.
Okay. Well, I mean, like I said, tune in next time. We will bring you another update on the conflict in the Middle East and for a cold case. That will be something to talk about. It'll be pretty interesting.
All right. See you all next week.
Appreciate you guys showing up.